MX2001 water level logger. My name is Paul Gannett, and I'm Product Marketing Manager for Onset's Environmental Monitoring Products. There we go. Before we start into the details on the new logger, I want to just go through a few details related to the webinar. It'll run for about an hour, about 45 minutes of going through some slides I've prepared, and then about 15-20 minutes for questions. You can type your questions in at any time into the questions section of your control panel on your screen. I will probably wait on answering those until to the question and answer portion, but you can type them in advance, so when it's convenient for you. The webinar is being recorded, so we will make a copy of it available afterwards, so you can refer to that later. And here's our agenda for today. We're going to go through an overview of the HOBO MX2001 water level logger. Then I'll go through a demo of using that, using the HOBOmobile software that it's used with. Then I'll go into a little bit of system configuration. That's basically how to ensure that you get the parts you need for a complete system. A little bit about comparing this to other HOBO water level loggers, because we do have other choices as well, and it's good to know which one is best for a given application. I'll talk a little bit about deployment tips, and as I mentioned, there will be time for questions and answers. And one of the first things is just a little bit about Onset for those of you who are not familiar with us. This is a picture of our facility on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. We design and manufacture and do this most of the marketing and support from this facility here. We are, of course, known for our HOBO data loggers. We were originally founded back in 1981. We have about 130 employees, and we also have a global network of distributors, so that for those of you, especially in other countries, you can find somebody in your time zone and language to work with. So you can of course feel comfortable with working with any of our distributors, either in the U.S. or internationally. And as the last point is, we do focus on data logging and monitoring. So I'm going to start out with a question just to get everybody engaged. So let me come over here, and the question is, what data loggers have you been using? And here's a chance for you to enter it in. So you can see the choices there. You can be using HOBO loggers, other loggers. I'll let you read through them. And once I get a good statistical sample, we'll close out the poll. This helps me just get a feel for where you guys are at. It's always useful, so I can. It looks like we got a good mix. So a couple more seconds, and let's see. I'll show you the results. You should be seeing them on your screen now. As you can see, slightly over a third of you have been using HOBO water level loggers. That's good. So a lot of this will be familiar, and I'll definitely be comparing our new logger versus the existing loggers. Just under 20% have been using our other HOBO loggers, and another 24% have been using other water level loggers. And we've got a couple others, other loggers, and a few newbies too. So in all cases, I think you'll find these new loggers easy to use. So whatever your level of experience, you should be able to use them without any problems. So where am I? So with no further ado, let's talk about what the MX2001 is. First off, it's a fast and easy wireless offload using a smartphone or tablet. And because it's wireless, you don't need to remove the well cap as long as you have either a plastic well cap or PVC pipe at the top so that the wireless signal can go through it. So that makes them easy to offload. It uses Bluetooth Low Energy, also known as BLE. This is built into today's mobile devices, and this means because it's wireless, no cables are needed for offload, and because it's BLE, you don't need to push buttons on the logger to activate communications. And this logger does provide direct water level readout, so there is no need to do a data assistant or any sort of post-processing of the data to convert it into water level. So it's makes it very easy to get the data out. Here's a picture of what the MX2001 looks like. You can see the kind of on top there, that's the sensor end. That end resides in the water. And then the part that's laying down on the table surface there, that's the top end. And they're connected by a cable. And let me go through a little tour of it, of what's inside the logger. Kind of starting up here with the top end unit. That's where the batteries reside. And these batteries are user replaceable, and they have a 1-year battery life, so you can easily replace them with ordinary alkaline batteries after a year of use. It does include a barometric pressure sensor. This is what allows it to provide direct water level readout because it has the barometric pressure data included, and that saves you from having to do post-processing afterwards. The Bluetooth low energy communications is right up at the top, so that provides the best wireless communications by being up there at the top. There's a mounting eyelet up there as well for suspending it from a cable or from a bolt. Now moving down to the sensor end, it has two options. One has a stainless steel nose cone, that's for fresh water. And then there's another option with a titanium nose cone, that's for use in salt water. These loggers use the same durable ceramic sensor that we've been using in our other HOBO water level loggers. That's proven to be very reliable and robust, so we are continuing to use that in these loggers. There is interchangeable cables that connect the top end unit to the sensor end unit. They can be any length from 0.2 meters up to 500 meters. You specify that at the time of order, and they just screw on to the top end and sensor end units. You just hand tighten the little nuts on top to tighten them in place. They have a double O-ring seal to ensure a good waterproof seal. The cable is Kevlar reinforced, so it also functions as a suspension cable. And the top end connector also has strain relief, so that to provide good long-term stability for the sensor position. And that cable also provides the communications and battery power to the sensor end unit. Now, one thing I just want to make clear is the MX2001 does not use a vent tube. It uses a separate barometric pressure sensor that resides in the top. And basically the reason that we went with that approach is vent tubes do require some maintenance, desiccant replacements, and they can, in some cases, if they're not maintained properly, have reliability issues. We chose the two-sensor approach to provide the most reliable performance. So also I want to point out that this logger uses Bluetooth Low Energy, also known as BLE, which is also known as Bluetooth Smart. And there's a little bit of different terms that are used in different by different organizations. We tend to use BLE. And the nice thing about BLE is that the mobile device can initiate communications without needing to push a button on the logger part. which is necessary if we were to have used classic Bluetooth 2.0. So BLE really provides the easiest offload. It also provides low current use, which enables the 1-year battery life that we get from the AA batteries in the top unit. Today's mobile devices come with Bluetooth 4.0, which actually includes both BLE that we use as well as support for classic Bluetooth. So now switching gears from the hardware to the software side, HOBOmobile is the software interface. It runs on a range of iOS mobile devices, including iPhones, iPads, and iPod touches, running OS 8.x and 9.0 that have the Bluetooth 4.0. This is a free download from the Apple App Store. You can go there and take a peek at that now. And at this point, we do not have Android support yet. That's in progress, and we hope to have that soon. So I'm going to give you a little tour of what it's like to use the logger with HOBOmobile. And this is the kind of the main screen if you're going out into the field, and when you walk into the range of a MX2001, you'll see it show up here as is shown here with well 6. To connect to that logger, you just have to tap on that row, and that will bring you into a screen that looks like this. This is the connected scene, we call it. And this is where you can access all the different logger actions. So you can configure a logger, you can read out the data, you can update reference water levels, you can see full status details, which is, I'll show you that screen in a second. You can stop the logger, and you can also enter a password. So a range of functionality. Let's go in and look at the configuration screen. This is where you set things like the logging interval, the logging duration, and what mode you want it to start in, whether you want it to start now or the next logging interval. And you can see the red box here. That's different about this logger from some of our other data loggers that are supported with HOBOmobile, and that is that it allows you to enter in the reference water level and water density right at the beginning of the deployment. And that's really the best time to enter that, because that means you can view real-time water level during the deployment when you're out in the field with your mobile device, because that way it will know what reference value to use to correct the water level readings. You can also change the reference water level during the deployment or in the data file afterwards if you find out for some reason later on that your initial value was not as accurate as you want. So also in configuration, we've got these little handy diagrams to help you decide what polarity to use when entering the reference water level. So for example, if you're using the top of the well as your reference point and you're measuring down to the water table, you'd enter the reference water level as a negative value. That keeps the polarity correct. And those little screens are accessed with that eye icon up there. There's several logging modes in this logger. The first one is kind of the traditional, normal, fixed-rate logging, where it logs every 5 minutes, for example. Then we have the option of multi-rate logging, where you can define in advance up to 8 logging intervals. Each logging interval can have its own logging rate and number of samples. So an example of where you might want to use this is in pump down test, where you want to sample very fast at first, but then you want to slow down the logging rate as the aquifer reaches equilibrium. There's also a burst logging mode. Some people call this an event logging mode. And basically what this is that a logger will log at a faster rate when the water level goes below or above some reference level that you can enter in. So, for example, when the pumps turn on and it draws the water level below a certain level, you can have it log at a faster rate for that time. Another mode in this logger is statistics logging. This is where it takes samples at a faster rate and then can log the minimum, maximum, average, and or standard deviation for each logging interval. So for example, you might sample at a 30-second rate and log every 5 minutes, so you get the average of 10 readings over that 5-minute interval. That can be useful if you're trying to look for peaks and or averaging out noise, for example. You know, those are averaging out waves. The statistics can help with that. So as I mentioned earlier, you can view the current conditions during the deployment. So here's the 4 readings you can see in real time: the differential pressure, the absolute pressure, that's the absolute pressure of the sensor that's in the water, the temperature of the water, and then the water level can be displayed directly there as well. So you can view those during the deployment at any time when you're out in the field. And then you can also view the product ID, device details like battery level, make sure your battery level is still good, make sure you've got enough memory left, and confirm that it's logging. And turns out these mobile platforms are pretty powerful, so we can easily show graphs, and that's a nice way to confirm that everything's operating as you'd expect during the deployment. So you can offload a graph like this, and then you can use the pinch and outward spread gestures to zoom in and zoom out to get a better view of what's happening. And then you can easily share those offloaded data files in a variety of formats: Excel, CSV, text formats, our HOBO format for compatibility with our HOBOware software. And then you can share these via email, AirDrop, Google Drive, etc. And that depends upon what sharing apps you have installed on your device. We also have some time-saving, it's actually a time-saving option, which allows you to carry over the logging configuration settings for a group of loggers that are being deployed together so that they all start at the same time, they all have the same logging rate. It's a good way to ensure consistency across all your loggers. However, this does not carry over the reference water level or water density or alarm settings for the loggers. It keeps whatever was in the logger already. We're assuming that the loggers are staying in the same well, so you want to keep the same reference level in the logger. So a few other specifications that might be of interest. The first one is I want to talk about is accuracy. And when you're thinking of accuracy, you need to consider both the water level sensor accuracy and the barometric pressure sensor accuracy, because they can both contribute to measurement error. So, for example, with our MX2001 logger, which has a 30-foot range, the typical error on that is, I'm going to talk in feet just to choose a unit. The typical error is 0.015 feet for that 30-foot range. The barometric pressure sensor, which is in the top end, typically has a 0.01 foot error, and that would give you a total system accuracy of 0.025 feet. And then if you convert that over to percentage, that's 0.08% of full scale. So that just gives you a sense for how to determine, the accuracy you're going to get. And being quite honest, barometric pressure sensor error is often overlooked by when people are looking at water level loggers, but it really should be included as part of the overall system accuracy. And the MX2001 sensors are calibrated in production here to provide accurate temperature compensation over the 0 to 40 C operating range, or actually I should say calibrated range of these loggers. Some other specs to you may be interested in. The wireless range is 100 feet, so or just over 30 meters line of sight. So if you're in the area, you're going to be able to read out the logger. Memory, it's 256 kbyte. That's good for 30,000 sets of measurements of all those different parameters that the logger records. The temperature, differential pressure, absolute pressure, water level, etc. The battery life, I think I mentioned this earlier, is 1 year with a 1 minute logging interval. And the batteries are user replaceable with standard alkaline AA batteries. One question that's come up, especially for those of you in colder climates, the alkaline batteries can be replaced with lithium AA batteries, and this extends the operating range down to -40 degrees Celsius. Now that's for the top end unit. Obviously the sensor wants to be, to measure water level, it needs to be in water. It doesn't measure the ice level very well. That kind of throws off the pressure sensor. Diameter of the logger, both the top end and the sensor end unit, is 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters. And because this does use wireless communications, it is subject to wireless compliance standards where it's used. So as of this point, we've done the certification testing for the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and all of the CE countries. We do plan on doing some additional testing, so stay tuned if you're in one of those in other countries. A little bit about pricing. As I mentioned before, it comes in 2 different versions, one with the stainless steel end cap and then the others with the titanium end caps. So the price with the stainless end caps is $595. With titanium, it's $645. And this includes both the top end unit and the sensor end. We sell them together as sets, and then all you need to buy is a cable and then the HOBOmobile download from the App Store, which is free. So for the cables, basically the pricing is based on a kind of a $70 US dollar base price, and then it's $4 per meter for the length of it. So we have the 5 lengths that we have in stock at this point. And we'll keep these lengths in stock, so you can see the prices on those. But there's a wide range of custom lengths available as well. That's current lead time on those is 2 to 4 weeks. We might tighten that up a little bit as we ramp up production. And speaking of the cables, this thought a little picture might help guide you in terms of choosing the optimal cable length for your deployment. The first thing you do is you select the logger based on the water level range. So we offer the 4 different ranges: 30 foot, 100 foot, 250 foot, and 13 foot. So select the logger based on that water level range. That's the height of the maximum height above the sensor that it will measure. And then the cable is that's the distance from the sensor to the mounting point, but you also have to factor in the length of the logger. So so you subtract out 0.39 meters or 1.3 feet if you're thinking in feet for the logger and the sensor length, and then they'll give you the kind of the length of the cable you want. Then if you're because the cables are ordered in meters, if you calculated that in feet, you've got to convert it to meters. So in that case, you multiply by 0.305. So hopefully that's reasonably clear. And I should note the cables can vary in length from what is ordered by plus or minus 3%. Typically they'll be closer than that, and we may tighten this up in time, but for right now, just to be upfront, we're saying it could vary by up to 3%. We are also offering a well cap accessory. This is useful for mounting the logger because it's made out of plastic, so the wireless communications works well for this. So if you use this, you can put it on top of a metal well, and it'll get the Bluetooth transmitter high enough above the well so that you'll get the the good wireless transmission range. And that little black disc that's in the top of the well, that can easily be, that just setting there, so that can be pulled up. So if you need access to the well for other things, you can pull up the logger, temporarily do that, and then slide it back down into place. It does have slots for mounting suspension cables for other devices as well, and the price on that is $49. That includes everything you see there in the picture. So this is where, kind of switching gears, so far I've just really been talking about the new MX2001 logger, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about how that's positioned versus the other HOBO loggers that we offer. It's not a case of one size fits all. We offer this range of loggers so that we can hopefully cover your range of applications. And this is just kind of a price versus accuracy chart. On the left side is the system price, and to come up with these prices, what I did is I took the price of the logger, added in the cable in the case of the MX2001s. In the case of our standalone loggers, the HOBO U20s and the U20Ls, what I did is I added in a quarter of the price of a barometric pressure logger to kind of assuming that logger is going to be shared between multiple loggers, and just just to come up with some way of putting them on the same axis. So you can see that the MX2001s are going to typically cost you a little bit more than the U20 loggers with the metal housings, and but provide the same level of accuracy. Accuracy's on the scale down below. The U20L loggers are still your most cost-effective option, and those are a little bit less accurate, but still pretty good accuracy. So this is probably a lot of detail, but let me just kind of highlight the key points here. I try to highlight them in purple. The one column there is for the MX2001 loggers, our new loggers, and the next column is for the U20 and the U20L series loggers, kind of combined, because I'm assuming you're familiar with those already if you've been using our loggers. And if price is the most important thing to you, the U20L loggers are probably still going to be your first choice. Those the most cost-effective at $299 per logger. But if time savings, if time in the field is important to you, which especially could be the case if you've got a lot of loggers that you're offloading on a fairly regular basis, then the MX2001 series loggers are clearly going to be your best choice, because with a wireless readout and not having to do the post-processing of the data and not having to pull up the logger from the well, that can save a lot of time. That really adds up if you've got several loggers. So in terms of mounting, I put that down there. In some cases, having to run a cable to the surface for the for the top end unit can be an issue. So if that's an issue, then you probably still want to use the U20 or U20L loggers. And then another difference between them is the battery placement. The U20 loggers have factory replaceable batteries, but in some cases it's not convenient to send them back to us. So that's one of the nice advantages of the new loggers, is they have the user replaceable batteries. So as you can see, the rest of the choices pretty much not really decision factors between them. You can get the same accuracy between these families. You can get the same diameter, temperature response, both durable, similar, the same depth ranges, and both have saltwater versions. And the MX2001s also have the 3-point NIST traceable certificate included with them, like the U20s do. So really the key differences to be looking at are the ones highlighted in purple. So I want to talk just briefly about the advantages of a direct readout logger in general. So using the MX2001 as an example, and by a direct readout logger, I mean one that has a cable from the top to the sensor or logger that's down in the bottom of the well. And it's really for cases where you don't want to pull up the water level logger or sensor to offload the data. And some of the reasons for this is it saves time. Pulling up the loggers can take time, especially if they're in a deep well. And if there's many wells, it also takes a lot of time. There are also applications where there can be other instruments or pumps in the well, so pulling up a logger can be problematic because that might get tangled up in the other instruments. Another issue is if you've got a deep well, those long cables down to the sensor or logger at the bottom can create an octopus mess when you pull all that up. So I guess you can deal with that with a reel, but again, leaving it down there saves having to deal with that. And it also avoids exposing the user to potential contaminants in the well. And it also, on the other side, it avoids potentially knocking dirt or something into the well if you're not having to futz with a cable. So those are just some general advantages of direct readout type loggers. I should also mention another option for monitoring water levels is internet-enabled water level loggers. And for that, we have what we call the HOBO MX2001, which has cellular communications, Wi-Fi communications options, and it has 4 to 20 milliamp inputs. And there's a wide range of sensors out there that have 4 to 20 milliamp outputs that can be connected into this. So we get a lot of users that are using this combination so that they can see water level from wherever they are, and as well as getting alarm notifications. And it also opens up a lot of flexible data sharing options. We do have an application note on using the RX3000s with water level sensors on our website. So just kind of a quick summary. Why would you choose to use the HOBO MX2001? The big reason is clearly to save time with a wireless readout and not having to do the post-processing of the data. You can also easily check the current water level and logger status during deployment. You don't have to worry about vent tubes. You get good accuracy, dependable performance, all for a pretty good price, especially when you consider that it includes the barometric pressure sensor, and it has the user replaceable batteries. So, time for another question. Make sure that you've been paying attention. This shouldn't be too hard. So let me go here to my polls, and so the question is, where do you plan to deploy water level loggers? And here's some of the choices. So take a read through those. You can check all of those that apply. So I'll give you a few seconds, half a minute or so to go through these. So it looks like we got users in all of these categories, as I would expect. I'm sure some, yeah, they're adding up to over 100%. So I can see several of you have applications in multiple categories. So that's good. Let me. Looks like most of you had a chance to respond. So I'm going to close this and show you the results. And let's see, so you can see the biggest category was groundwater, no surprise there, followed by lakes, rivers, streams, and canals. I guess that's a pretty broad category, a lot of, basically your surface water. We got some in wetlands and some in stormwater and coastal waters as well. So good, thanks for sharing your thoughts there. Let's see, we'll go back here to presentation. So here's some mounting scenarios that apply to some of those areas where you're deploying these loggers. So just to give you some ideas, classic way is to mount it in a well with a plastic well cap such as ours, and you can see see that here. Some other ways we've seen these deployed. Here's a very deep well. I believe this well was near mining and went down like 450 feet. So it's you can see it's a big well, lots of cable. But yeah, when you've got a well that's that deep, being able to do the wireless offload at the top, you can see how that would save a lot of time. And in this case, they do need to, because of the steel cover, they would need to slide it back to be able to do the wireless offload. But they don't have to pull the sensor up to get the data, which again saves a lot of time. Down here, you can see the dock with a PVC pipe mounted to the side of it. This is a classic way of deploying them where you have structures such as docks to mount your water level logger, coastal applications, rivers, streams, and mounted in there. You can easily do the wireless offload without having to pull the logger up. The stilling well provides some nice stability for the sensor, protects it from debris that's flowing in and out with tides or currents. And here's another typical application where there's a stake. In this case, I think it's a runoff retention pond, and it's got a stilling well attached with hose clamps to the metal stake. The MX2001 was inside there. And one of the nice things in this application is the wireless offload allowed the logger to be offloaded without having to wade out or take a boat out to the stilling well to get the data. So big time savings there. So there's just some ideas of how these can be mounted and deployed. Another case too to keep in mind is if you're along a stream, a lot of times you can't have a stilling well out in the middle of the stream, but you can have the option of having a pipe that runs down along the side. You can, because it's measuring pressure with the sensor, it can be at an angle. The well does not have to be vertical because it's just measuring pressure. And this is a good way of protecting the cable and the sensor in this kind of deployment. Another thing I just wanted to talk about is, in some cases you may not have exactly the cable length you want. You can always order another cable and from us and use that for your next deployment because the cables are interchangeable. But even then, you may still find a case where you need to either shorten or lengthen the cable a little bit because of the nature of these cables. That they need to be waterproof. You can't cut and splice them. You want to preserve the integrity of the cable. So here's some options for shortening the cable. The first one is to add a little loop, kind of a figure-8 loop, and secure it with zip ties, as I show over here on the left. Make sure that you use 2 or 3 zip ties so that it's not going to slide, because if it slides at all, that's going to result in a measurement error. Another choice is to wrap a cable around a 3/4 inch pipe with a 1 inch outside diameter, as shown in this other diagram. Another choice is to add to actually raise the height of the well. That effectively uses up some extra cable if you have extra cable. Then on the other side, if you need to lengthen the cable, you really can't lengthen the cable per se, but you can suspend the logger lower in the well, and you're just hanging that from another cable. But that may mean that the wireless communications won't work as well, because if the wireless is below ground level or in the metal part of a well, you may have to be directly over the well to offload the data. But that's an option that you can consider. So, yeah, we're pretty much right on time here. I've got about just under 20 minutes for questions. So let's see if any. I haven't had my questions window open, but let me open that up and see what's on your mind. Oh, great. Many questions here. So give me a second to scroll through them. So I'm just going to kind of start in the order that I see them here. first question is, are there batteries in the lower sensor unit as well? And the answer on that is no. The batteries are entirely in the upper unit, and that's part of what the cable does, is it brings the battery power from the upper unit, the top end unit, down to the sensor end unit. So we went with that approach because it just makes it easier to replace the batteries if you just have the one place where you have to replace the batteries. Let's see. Next question. This is this is a common one. Can the MX2001 be configured to communicate automatically with an onset weather station? And the answer on that at this time is no. We don't have a Bluetooth receiver for any of our weather stations. If you do need the web-enabled capability, that would be the RX 3000 configuration I was talking about with a third-party water level sensor. But certainly, we're going to consider ways of integrating the MX2001 with our weather stations for the future, because we definitely see the need for that. Let's see. Continue down. Okay, here's a question. How do these loggers compare to other onset water level loggers in terms of their ability to be used in freezing, near freezing conditions? Yeah, we understand a lot of you are using these, in harsh conditions where you may experience freezing. The ceramic sensors that we use are very durable, and we've had, and we use those same ceramic sensors in these MX2001 loggers. We've found that if they do get frozen into ice, that in most cases, once they thaw out, they work fine. They've maintained their calibration. Occasionally, we do hear about sensors that are damaged by the ice that's frozen up around them. And we've tested the MX2001 basically the same to be and found its performance in freezing conditions to be the same as our existing U20 loggers. So very consistent. Let's see. Question about metal caps on wells. Yeah, around here a lot of the wells do have metal caps on them. And certainly you can use these loggers in a well with a metal cap. And suspend it from the cap or with some other suspension device. It won't communicate wirelessly through that, but what you can do is take off the cap, and then you'll be able to communicate wirelessly. And it still saves you the trouble of having to actually pull up a logger. So it's still some benefits to it. Not quite as convenient as being able to read it out while it's in the well. So it's kind of one of the trade-offs that you'll have to consider. But certainly you can use it in wells with metal caps, and I understand those are popular because they're so so durable and they protect the wells from tampering. So that's one of the trade-offs you'll have to consider. Let's see. Question about the top-end unit versus being underwater. The top-end unit definitely needs to be in the air because that's where the barometric pressure is measured. So for you to accurately be able to measure the difference between the air and the water pressure, the top-end unit needs to be in the air. So keep that in mind. And one question we get, I don't know if it's in here somewhere, but I'll address it, is that can the top-end unit withstand short-term submersion? Because sometimes you'll get a storm surge or waves that will come crashing over it. And yes, it can withstand the short-term submersion or waves. Of course, when it's submerged, it's not going to be measuring barometric pressure accurately. So your data will not be as accurate during that time, but at least the logger will survive. And once the water level goes down, then it will again record accurate water level changes. There's a question on, with lower frequency sampling, can the batteries last for more than 1 year? Yeah, it'll probably last a little bit more than a year. That's something where you want to keep an eye on the battery level. The logging is probably the biggest factor in the battery usage, so you can extend it. But there's also some self-discharge and other things that are happening. So, in general, we'd recommend trying to keep it to less than a year deployments on a set of batteries. We don't want to take any chances with losing data. Let's see. Question about the wireless range. Yeah, is that conservative? Yeah, we spec it for 100-foot range. That's with the wells around here. Yeah, if you were to get it up a little bit higher, it probably would get a longer range. That's that's pretty common with wireless. If you can get it up higher, you get a longer range. So if you want to get longer range and you've got the ability to go higher with your wells, that's a good option. To be honest, I can't say what that longer range would be. So let's see. A question about, is the well cap threaded? The well cap we sell, it's actually it's got grooves in it on the inner part of it. It's designed to actually be pounded on. So basically, you take like a rubber mallet and pound it on top of the well to secure it in place. So it's pretty snug when it goes on, and it's not necessarily designed to be easily removed. And you may have noticed it has a clasp on it where you can put a padlock through it. What we found is most users want to be able to secure their well to keep it from being tampered with. Another question is the data password protected. Let's see, the data itself isn't, but the logger is. So you can set a password on the logger, and that password protects any user except for the user that has either the password or is using the device that set the password. Only those people can offload the data. So it protects the data that way. So you can't just have somebody casually walking by and offloading the data with their iPhone. Yeah, you can password protect the data access. And that protects against any access for the logger. So that prevents somebody from reconfiguring the logger or something without you knowing it. Let's see. Question about needing cell service for the HOBO app to work. Well, certainly to download the app, you're going to need to be where you've got internet access. But actually, to use the HOBO app, you don't have to have cell service. You can be because it's doing the wireless communications to the logger using the Bluetooth that's built into the iPhone or iPad. So you can get the data, out in the field in remote locations without, in areas that don't have cell service. And then when you get back to an area with cell service or Wi-Fi access for your device, then you can share that data with other users via email and the other share services. Let's see. Great to see all these questions. If I don't get to them all, we'll follow up. Let's see. Oh, can the water level be downloaded with and without the barometric correction? Can the barometric readings be downloaded separately? And the answer is yes. When you get your resulting data, it includes the water pressure data, the barometric pressure data. It includes the differential pressure data. So all of those can be looked at separately, so you can look at the different components of the data, as well as your water level and your temperature data. So, and in their graphing utility that's included with HOBOmobile, you can have the choice of viewing any of those parameters as well. And certainly when you export those or share those with other applications as Excel files, all those different data series are included. Oh, here's a good question. Transmission in conditions of rain or snow. Yeah, rain and snow will reduce the transmission range for the Bluetooth, the moisture in the air. It's hard to say exactly what the reduction will be, but if it'll be similar to other devices that transmit. I believe it's at the 2.4 gigahertz frequency, so it'll be similar attenuation. Let's see. Yeah, can someone just open a 6-inch diameter cast metal cap to offload data? Yeah, definitely. If once you got that well cap off and you're standing above the well, you should be able to offload the data while that logger remains in the well. I can't say that I've done range testing above it, but I expect it to be pretty good. Certainly if you're standing right above it, it's going to be able to do that communications just fine. Let's see, a question about measurement frequency affecting battery life. Yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but yes, certainly if you're logging faster than a minute, the battery life will be less than the 1 year that we spec. But that's the nice thing about the replaceable batteries. If you've got an application where you need to log at a very fast rate, you can do that and use up your batteries, and then you go out buy a couple more AA alkaline batteries, and you can continue on with your testing. Let's see, a question about diameter of the well, the well cap. What diameters wells does that fit on? And that's just for a 2-inch or 2.54 centimeter wells. Depending upon the demand, we may add other diameter well caps. There is other plastic well caps available on the market. That for other size wells, you could do that, or you can use you got reducer fittings to adapt your well to fit our well cap. A little bit of PVC work and metal work sometimes is necessary. There's a question about drilling a hole in a metal well cap, and that's a good question. If that will allow wireless communications, my guess is no. I'm not a wireless expert, but I think one small hole is probably not going to be enough. We've had questions, similar questions. People want to read out these loggers under a manhole cover, and most cases I don't think it's going to work under a manhole cover. But again, if there's holes in the manhole cover and you can get your iPhone in just the right position, maybe you'll get lucky, be able to read it out. That's something we may need to do a little bit more testing on, because it is a question we're getting. Let's see. Question about frozen conditions. Did I understand you to say that these do not work in frozen conditions? Yeah, let me just clarify that again. If the water's frozen, the pressures are completely different than water pressures normally are. So any water level logger or sensor that's based on pressure measurements won't work once the water's frozen. It may continue to operate and survive those conditions, but it won't record valid water level data at those points. So you want to make sure, if you need the water level, that the water's, the sensor's down in the part of the water that's going to not freeze up. Let's see. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Can the entire unit be submerged? The stream gets flooded. Yeah, I guess we talked about that. It can be submerged for short amounts of time. I wouldn't want to have it go much longer than a few hours of getting submerged just to be safe, because it won't record water level accurately while it's submerged. And I'm speaking to the top end unit. And it may, if it's submerged for a long time, that may compromise the waterproof seals of the top end unit. A question on the temperature accuracy. That's a good question. I should know that. It's the same as our other water level loggers. So if you've been using those, the temperature accuracy, I believe is 0.4 degrees Celsius on these loggers, but that's something if that's important in your application, double check that in the specs on the web. Everything is up on the web, by the way. Question on the well cap, does it seal out water? And the well cap actually has a vent hole in it intentionally to allow the air pressure inside the well to equilibrate with the outside air. You know, the assumption is you want the pressure inside the well to be truly barometric pressure. Now, in some cases, you know, I understand that sometimes you don't want that well to be vented to the outside air, and in that case, you could plug up it's a 1/8 inch hole. You still may get some leakage around the rubber gasket in the well cap, but it's not really designed to be to keep water out. You know, it keeps rain out, and you know, fine. You know, that's no problem, but it's not designed to be a waterproof well cap. Question on, will the BLE work with both smartphones and personal computers? Smartphones, yes. Right now it's just the iOS smartphones, but soon we hope to have the Android support as well. Right now it does not support personal computers that happen to have a BLE dongle. And the reason for that is the software we've written is specifically for iOS devices. A question about, from a user that has many U20s, is there any way to integrate the cable and top unit to our existing U20s? And you know, unfortunately, the architecture of these loggers is quite different, so there isn't any way to connect existing U20s into our top-end unit. It is possible, however, if you're using the new MX2001 logger, you know, how it provides barometric pressure data. You can use that barometric pressure data to do the barometric compensation on your U20s, so you know, you can get a little gain there in terms of being able to share use that data for them. A question on, I knew this was going to come up, question on Android support. When's it going to be available? That was always a slippery one because, you know, any of you that have developed products know that sometimes schedules can change. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I'm hoping that it's going to be available in January. So I could live to eat my words, but that's what I'm hoping. Let's see. Yeah, question about the, I'm going to answer one more question, and then I think I'm going to have to call it. Then I'll follow up with the rest of you. Well, maybe I'll get a couple. You know, for those of you who have to go, I know we're coming up on the end time. There's a question about the slide where I talked about the system level accuracy, where it came up with a number of 0.08% full-scale accuracy. And is that the baro sensor combined into that to get that? And yes, so that's including both the baro sensor accuracy and the water level sensor accuracy together. So those are definitely the two components are included in that accuracy. Question about being able to measure water level in a stormwater discharge pipe. Absolutely. You know, you just need to have that top end unit up, you know, high enough so that it's not going to get submerged, and you know, so typically you'd want to put in some sort of stilling well in there to protect the cable again, and yeah, it should work fine for those applications. Again, you might, if it's under a manhole, you might have that issue I talked about with the wireless communications. Okay. So question about Bluetooth and aluminum protective casings. That's a good question. I've seen some information recently that suggests that the aluminum does not block the wireless as much, but that might be something worth experimenting with. We should probably give that a try here because I expect that question is going to come up again. So I'm just looking at my watch. I'm seeing that I am just past my stop time, so I'm going to stop here. We'll for the questions that we didn't get to, we will follow up with you afterwards. We're happy to do that. And I guess at this point, I want to just bring out a couple other points. And let's see, make sure. We do have a lot of resources available for you to find out more information. If you notice in the webinar, we have a free white paper. It's in the handouts section of your control panel. This is on choosing a water level logger, 5 things you should know. And this just kind of goes through some different considerations that you'll want to look at as you're deciding between various water level loggers. Of course, you can call us at any time on our 800 number, or if you're international, you can call on our 508 number. I mentioned before we have a wide range of distributors available you can contact as well. We also have our let's see, our website, which has a wealth of white papers. All the technical specs are up there, pricing, everything's on our website, onsetcomp.com. You want to have that address bookmarked. And of course, you can contact us by email to speak to one of our application specialists who can put together a quote. That's sales@onsetcomp.com. And for technical support, it's loggerhelp@onsetcomp.com. So there we have it. Thanks for all your good questions. Thanks for your attention. Hopefully this has provided some useful information for you. And well, thanks for attending.